you're going anywhere and you're like, hey, I got myself. That's all I need. It's more than enough. Myself is sufficient for anywhere that I'm going, any challenge I might see, any experience I might have. Myself is sufficient. We are back, baby, with another reflection on the daily Vedantic, and today's ep is on. Well, it's really a reflection on a recent experience I had. An RV trip. My wife, Cheney, and I, and our 3 daughters, we rented an RV, and without going into the details of the chaos to actually get the RV, because previous rentals canceled on us the day of, and I was able to find a replacement and ended up having to go to a completely different part of California than we thought we were going to. Once we got it all situated, bags packed, all of the things for all of the kids, got it loaded into the new RV that we were renting, which went from like a 30-foot vehicle to a 39-foot vehicle, which is basically like driving a bus. And it was the only one that kind of fit what we were looking for this trip, and only one available that day that we had to rent day of nearby. It was so damn hard to drive this thing. Essentially a bus. And there was like 4 inches on either side of the lane when driving this thing down the highway because it was so wide. I can't believe they gave, it totally blows my mind that they just give anyone that has a driver's license keys to something like this. Thing was huge, and I felt wholly unqualified to drive that. One of the things that we've liked about RV trips in the past is with all of our kids and all of our bags and clothes and all of our things. It's like driving around with your home. We went from the RV park to Legoland, and we took our home with us for that trip. For a 7-hour amusement park trip where our youngest, who was about 1.5 years, she needed a nap in the middle of the day. It seemed perfect. Okay, she's going to need a nap. We can take our whole temporary home with us, with all of our stuff. Sounded good in theory to have all of our stuff with us at all times. Until you start driving down the highway and then the residential streets that get to Legoland. And then you get in the lanes to go to the public parking for Legoland. We got up to the parking lot attendant. We were paying for our parking for the day, and we barely within a centimeter made it in. Clogged up the traffic behind us because we had to go so slow to go through this tiny, tiny little lane built for much smaller cars within a centimeter on one of the sides and maybe 2 centimeters on the other side. Made it through. Turns out when we travel with all of our stuff, it might seem convenient, but by the end of the trip, we cut it a day short. Everything we wanted to do, we essentially had to rent some other car to do it, an Uber, or just stay in the RV park. Turns out the idea of being able to take all of your stuff with you anywhere you want to go limits anywhere you want to go to, well, any place that can handle all of your stuff. The more stuff you have reduces that further to maybe just a few places that can handle all of your stuff. Accumulate even more and more and more. Maybe you can't go anywhere. The RV, for many of our lives, that is all of our desires, all of our fears, all of our emotions, all of the baggage that we take everywhere we go. Every lunch, every dinner, every vacation, every job interview, every interaction with a stranger. For many of us, we're there with all of our stuff. Maybe you're there with all of the people you're bringing with you. You're building a company and you've got 50 employees. You're deciding what is best for everyone. But all of your people is very different than all of your stuff. Where it's what's best for everyone, but also best for, well, my insatiable demand for admiration. My self-sabotaging inner dialogue of insecurity. And, oh yeah, what's best for everybody? What's best for today in this trip to Legoland, but also includes all of these worries, concerns, for things going wrong at work that sit right in my pocket on my phone. All of this peace and happiness that hinges on just a few things going right that I need them to go right. And then you have a lunch with a friend and they tell you that that thing that you wanted to go right isn't going right. But what is the opposite of traveling with all of our stuff? All of our needs, all of our things. My daughter Elle, when she packs for a trip, she's packing all of these different extra things that she will probably use for maybe a minute. But she's packing it all because, well, the idea of a great trip requires all of these extra things. What is the opposite of that? On the individual level, the motorcycle that can go anywhere, that can zoom in between traffic, that can get into any parking, in fact, can create parking on a dime. What is that individual equivalent? It's self-sufficiency. The ability to say, oh, I actually don't need those 18 things. I don't need that rock collection in my travel bag, in my suitcase on this trip to Legoland. I don't need the RV. I don't need these huge bags of desires and attachments. I'm not weighted down by all of these fears or insecurities. On the individual level, it is self-sufficiency. As practical as it is profound, to where you're going anywhere and you're like, hey, I got myself. That's all I need. It's more than enough. Myself is sufficient for anywhere that I'm going. Any challenge I might see, any experience I might have. Myself is sufficient. I say as practical as it is profound, because you can take that, maybe even literal example, draw it out metaphorically, philosophically, and that is why it's one of the highest ideals. One of the highest ideals in the philosophy of Vedanta is self-sufficiency. Then all of our stuff, when you factor in, let's say, traveling with your family, it's not a situation where you can be in a motorcycle. It's not the individual example, it's the community example. All of our stuff. Well, the antidote to feeling like traveling with all of your stuff, all of your needs, trying to navigate a narrow path with all of these people with you, that in a dualistic way where you feel separate from them, it can feel like you're herding cattle at best, or that you're being held down by dead weight at worst. What's the antidote? What is the philosophical antidote to that? Well, it's really simple. It's cultivating a larger and ever increasingly larger ring of identification to where they're not separate from you. It's not dead weight. They are you. For you to be able to go somewhere and they're not with you, well, it's not you being able to go there. Because with a cultivation of identification, with more than just yourself, starting with your family, then extending that out, ever-increasing ring of identification within the philosophy of Vedanta, this concept is, it is to take your identification of yourself, expand it to everyone in your home, then to your community, then to your city, then to your state, then to your region, then to your country, then to all human beings, then to all living beings, then to everything that you can perceive, then to everything you can't perceive, to all that is, that identification with all that is. Not a simple exercise, but the ideal serves as a reminder of what we should pursue, an ever-increasing ring of identification on the spiritual side of things. That's where it goes from, I want to go from here to there. I want to get there. I want to get into that narrow entrance. Other people be damned. Who cares if they don't come with me? I'm going to ride self-sufficiency in the individual approach to get there myself. Not knowing that with an ever-increasing ring of identification, you don't get there unless they get there too. The Bodhisattva vow to not become enlightened and go off into the forest, leaving society behind, but to realize the job ain't done until everybody is there with you. One hell of an undertaking, one hell of a vow. One hell of an exercise to increase our ring of identification just to another person, much less all of those rings I outlined before. The visual that I like to use for this, balancing the ideals, balancing the individual approach, balancing the service towards those around us, the collective approach, is this. You have to find El Dorado to lead people to it. El Dorado is the mythical golden city. You've got to take the machete to the jungle. You can't pull up in a cruise ship. You can't pull up in a massive 18-wheeler truck or a 39-foot RV because you'll get stopped right in the beginning of the jungle. There is no road there. You've got to leave all of your stuff, save for a few important tools. Maybe it's daily reflection. Maybe it's questioning everything. Maybe it's not taking anything for granted. These are the machetes that you take. These are your tools. The knives and machetes, the sutures, the very light gear that you're taking to chop away a path in the jungle to El Dorado. Start to recognizing that you're making quite a bit of progress. You start to see it. And you recognize that what is the point of being there alone? There is a duty to let others know. In every step of the way, you generate more and more energy. You're not even at El Dorado, but you've never felt this amount of energy before. You've never felt stronger. You've never felt more yourself than how you feel right now, to where you realize just the journey to El Dorado is worth telling everybody about. So you go back out and you let everyone know, hey, bring your machetes over here. You start to cultivate a path. Most people don't want to hear it. 1 in 10,000 do. And then 1 in 10,000 is more than enough because you recognize there ain't nothing like this. Your individual, sometimes solitary path is now creating a groove in which you go back and you tell, or at least you let people know about your experience. And the 1 in 10,000 that find it interesting start to travel with you. And you go back again. You make your own headway, but you realize this is not for you to keep to yourself. So you go back and you bring a couple shovels with you. You start to expand that path. Before you know it, you're starting to lay down the gravel, then pave a road. And yes, you're getting closer and closer, but you have all of these people with you, a satsang with you, that keep the caravan going, that give you energy when you need it. And then you hit El Dorado. That individual effort becomes a collective satsang undertaking. And that collective satsang undertaking paves the path for even more and more people to make their way to that golden city, that individual self-sufficiency, that ability for you to go at it alone. Then that cultivation of an identification with everyone around you, maybe just starting with a few people around you. It starts to widen the path. It starts to become as energizing as walking the path on your own. And that communal, collective effort starts to do things collectively that you couldn't have ever done individually. It's not dead weight. It's not going back and getting others out of just pure duty. It actually ends up being a critical part of the discovery. Turns out when we leave all of our stuff behind, sometimes we might even think we're leaving relationships. Certainly you might feel like we're leaving name, validation behind. Maybe we're disappointing some people. When we can leave those things behind, we might end up creating the path that everyone we've ever cared for has been looking for. The path that they themselves could not have seen, or maybe didn't have the strength to individually hack away at the jungle to create. But they see in you something they've never seen before. The city starts to become visible to them too. And the glimmers that you show them through the path that you're blazing yourself, it recruits them right in. You leave behind all of your stuff. By bringing only what you truly need, you end up finding everything you ever wanted. That's today's reflection on the Daily Vedantic. We'll see you next time.